After nearly a year of relentless combat, choking dust storms, and sleepless nights in the unforgiving heat of Afghanistan, I had finally made it back to what I thought would be my sanctuary. 12 months of blood, grit, and deafening gunfire, of watching my brothers fall beside me, of writing final letters we hoped no one would ever have to read. The only thing that kept me sane through it all was the image of home, my mother's old cottage, the swing creaking gently in the wind, the scent of fresh pine drifting from the woods, and the gravel crunching beneath my boots as I walked up the driveway, like I had so many times before. But the moment the taxi pulled up to my street, something felt off. My boots, still crusted with the dust of foreign soil, stepped onto the curb, like they were crossing into enemy territory. I looked up, expecting to see the little white cottage with blue shutters and the wraparound porch, the very last place I hugged my mother before she passed, the place I'd promised I would protect even from halfway across the world. Instead, my stomach dropped. Where the house once stood, now sprawled a fenced-in dog park. I froze, blinking, disbelieving. Not a single wall, not one beam of wood, not even a remnant of the porch swing remained. Just artificial grass, fresh bark mulch, and a sleek black fence with decorative steel posts. I stood there in uniform, as 3 golden retrievers sprinted across the spot where my mother's kitchen window used to catch the morning sun. One of them dove into the patch that had once been my bedroom. A Dalmatian peed where I'd hung a family portrait. A woman in yoga pants strolled by and glanced at me at the duffel bag slung over my shoulder. The uniform, the disbelief written across my face. She gave me a practiced suburban smile, the kind you give a stranger who looks out of place, before tugging her poodle away from sniffing my military gear like I was the intruder. For a second, I genuinely thought I'd misremembered the address. I even pulled out my phone to check the number. That's when I saw it. The oak tree. The one just beyond the fence. Towering, proud, unbothered. Its trunk still scarred with the initials I carved as a teenager. My name and my mother's. The day before I left for basic. That tree didn't lie. This was my home. Or at least, it had been. Before someone decided to wipe it from the face of the earth. At the far edge of the park, a brand new metal plaque caught the light. Bold lettering gleamed like a slap in the face. Willow Ridge Community Park, sponsored by the Homeowners Association, and underneath it, in smaller print that twisted my gut, dedicated to peaceful living and communal joy. Peaceful living. My living room was now covered in dog droppings. My mother's rose garden had been replaced by a fire hydrant. The gravel path I helped my mom shovel during snowy winters was now a dog agility track. This wasn't just construction. This wasn't some accident of paperwork or urban planning. This was calculated, cold, intentional. The last physical connection I had to my mother was gone. The house where I grew up mourned, healed, and prepared for war, bulldozed while I was fighting one. And the country I swore to defend. It had let it happen. Chapter 2. Paperwork and arrogance still in uniform. I approached a couple walking by. What happened to the house here? I asked. The man shrugged. Some government guy didn't pay his taxes. HOA claimed the land and turned it into something useful. He sipped his smoothie. That government guy. That was me. What hit me wasn't rage. Not yet. It was disbelief. Exhaustion wrapped in heartbreak. I dodged bullets, pulled civilians out of burning buildings, led recon teams into darkness. And while I was fighting for peace, my neighborhood declared war on me. City records were a joke. According to them, I'd lost the land 6 months prior for tax delinquency, but I'd filed for military exemption before deployment. The clerk shrugged like it wasn't his problem and told me to talk to the HOA. Karen Mallister, president of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association, self-appointed monarch of the manicured cul-de-sac, the kind of person who wielded a clipboard like a sword and whose weapon of choice wasn't a rifle or a threat. It was a violation notice left on your door for having the wrong kind of garden gnome. I'd heard of people like her, the suburban tyrant, the ruler of trivial rules, but I had no idea how far her empire of control really extended until I saw it firsthand. The clubhouse was exactly what you'd expect from someone like Karen, air-conditioned, sterile, over-decorated with Fox Mediterranean tiles and live, laugh, love signs plastered in gilded frames. Wine glasses clinked faintly in the background. She sat at the head of a long table like she was holding court in Versailles, dressed in a pastel pantsuit, glass of Chardonnay in hand, surrounded by HOA board members who hung onto her every word. Like disciples, she didn't look up when I walked, and not at first. I stood tall, my boots echoing against the polished laminate floor, duffel still slung over my shoulder. I cleared my throat and introduced myself, told her my name, told her I was the rightful owner of 1428 Maple Trail, That got her attention. Her head cocked slightly, the glass stopped halfway to her lips. She blinked once, then slowly turned to face me with that infamous Karen smirk, the kind of expression that made you feel like she already thought she was better than you before she even knew your name. "Oh yes," she drawled, flipping open a large leather binder lined with laminated documents, maps, and color-coded tabs like it was the HOA Book of Judgment. That lot had gone unclaimed for some time. Per community protocol, it was reassigned to the neighborhood for communal use. You see, you didn't maintain the property, so it fell into compliance default. I stared at her, confused and furious all at once. I explained my status, told her I had been deployed overseas, that I had filed a federal military tax exemption before I left, that I was legally protected under the Service Members Civil Relief Act (SCRA), a federal safeguard for active duty personnel against property seizure and foreclosure. She didn't care. She cut me off mid-sentence with a wave of her hand like I was a customer trying to return a sweater without a receipt, maybe. She said with a raised brow and a cold grin, "You should have thought of that before running off to the army and abandoning your adult responsibilities." There was a silence so thick in the room, you could have heard a pin drop, or a pulse. Mine was pounding in my ears. I clenched my fists so tightly, my knuckles turned white. My jaw locked, but I didn't lash out. I had faced Taliban fighters with rocket launchers. I had faced ambushes in the dark, roadside bombs, and betrayal from within foreign governments. But this woman, this felt worse. It was quiet cruelty, bureaucratic betrayal wrapped in neighborhood civility. Then, as if mocking me, she offered what she called a generous alternative. She flipped a page and tapped her manicured nail on a map. "There is a lovely vacant lot behind the community dumpster area," she said sweetly. "We could arrange a reassignment, strictly as a gesture of goodwill, of course. You're a soldier. After all, we like to support our troops." As if I were a stray dog she was graciously adopting. As if the home I lost was just some file to be reshuffled in her HOA empire. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I simply turned around and walked out of that perfumed courtroom of petty tyranny. That night, I didn't sleep. I found a cheap roadside motel on the edge of town, the kind where the light flickers above the vending machine and the ice bucket always smells like mildew. I lay on the stiff bed, staring up at the stained ceiling tiles, and let the silence crawl in. I had survived snipers, airstrikes, and warlords, but this was a new kind of battlefield. One with board meetings instead of bullets, weaponized paperwork instead of RPGs, and an enemy who wore pearls and carried a wine glass instead of an AK-47. But I wasn't broken. I was calculating, because if there's one thing the military teaches you, it's how to wage war with precision. Chapter 4, Cyber Warfare and Corruption. Website sunrise. I picked up the phone. I made one call, just one. Luis Ortega, a former brother-in-arms. We'd served together during a rough rotation in Kandahar. He owed me his life, literally. I dragged him out of a flaming Humvee when our convoy was ambushed 3 years ago. These days, Luis worked in cybercrime for a federal agency. The kind of guy who didn't just find skeletons in closets. He hacked into the attic, basement, and backyard to dig up the bones people thought they buried years ago. I gave him the short version. What had happened. What I found. What Karen had done. Within hours, he was on it. He began scouring property records, zoning maps, public databases, HOA filings, and even internal emails pulled from compromised board member accounts. And what he found. It wasn't just dirty. It was radioactive. Forged signatures on property transfer documents, retroactive HOA meeting notes that were never held, on sales made to shell corporations registered under fake NAMES HOA board votes scheduled precisely during deployment dates when I physically couldn't contest them. Fake notices of abandonment filed as justification for seizure, deleted objections from neighbors, overwritten in the official records emails that dripped with entitlement, and a stay-known message from Karen's personal account said, "He's military, gone for good. Even if he comes back, who's gonna believe him over us?" Another from a board member, "Let's make Willow Ridge military free. HOA purity should be preserved." Another one simply read, "Easy flip. Soldiers' dirt is clean. Profit." Every sentence hit like shrapnel. My house hadn't just been stolen. It had been targeted. I wasn't collateral damage. I was the objective. And the worst part, they were laughing about it. Karen's cousin, a man named Gregory Mallister, had registered the shell company that now legally owned my land. That same company had acquired 6 other lots in the neighborhood under suspicious circumstances. Luis called it a textbook land fraud racket, wrapped in a pretty HOA bow. He sent me screenshots of the internal discussions. Messages where they casually joked about soldiers being transient liabilities and unsuitable for modern HOA values. One even referred to me as property flotsam. I stared at those emails for hours. The rage inside me didn't come in shouts or threats. It came in waves of icy resolve. I wasn't going to sue them. I wasn't going to post angry rants on social media. I was going to undo their world, piece by piece, and make them wish they'd never drawn a line through my name. Karen thought. This was over. But this wasn't the end. This was just the start of my counterattack. Chapter 5. Operation Civic Shield. The battle begins after uncovering the full scale of fraud, lies, and corruption behind the theft of my home. I didn't call a lawyer. I called a soldier. Colonel Trent. He wasn't just anyone. He was my former commanding officer. A battlefield tactician. A man who had once pulled our entire squad out of a Taliban-controlled valley. With nothing but a laptop, a drone strike authorization, and a cargo chopper. He had connections in Washington. He had pull with the Dod. And more importantly, he believed in his men. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. When he answered, I said 5 words. Colonel, they stole my home. He didn't ask for clarification. He didn't say I'm sorry to hear that. All he said was, send GPS coordinates. Send a list of structures. You want this quiet or dramatic? I didn't hesitate. Make it thunder. That's all it took. Within 24 hours, red tape vanished. Federal papers were filed under the Defense Civilian Training Integration Protocol. It was all perfectly legal, and more importantly, enforceable. The new operation was dubbed Operation Civic Shield. The land, including the Willow Ridge subdivision, was classified for temporary use as part of a federally sanctioned joint training initiative. That meant urban conflict simulation, disaster response evaluation, civil engineering deployment, and even logistics coordination for domestic emergencies. In short, it was now a live, active military training zone. The HOA didn't know what hit them. They thought I would fight this like a civilian. They thought I'd show up with a tired attorney and some sad legal brief. Instead, I showed up with a battalion. Chapter 6, Deployment Day. Thunder rolls over Willow Ridge the next morning. The sun rose over Willow Ridge like any other peaceful, overly landscaped suburban development. Sprinklers clicked on in synchronized harmony. Birdsong filled the air, and residents strolled their retrievers down pristine sidewalks, coffee mugs in hand, ignorant of the military reckoning heading straight for them. Then, like thunder, the convoys rolled in. Humvees, tactical trucks, light infantry transport units, civil engineers with survey drones and ground-penetrating radar. A mobile command tent was erected on the former dog park, my land, in under 10 minutes. Satellite uplinks deployed. Camouflage netting stretched over tents. Surveillance towers went up like clockwork. The HOA's prized community clubhouse reassigned. It was now a command and control center for the operation. The walking trail closed off and marked restricted access. Karen's beloved hydrangea garden, crushed under the tread of a 7-ton transport vehicle. The community's meditation garden, where yoga sessions were held every Saturday morning, had been repurposed as a temporary helipad. Residents stumbled out of their homes in various stages of disbelief. Robes, pajamas, slippers. One man in golf pants dropped his espresso. Another, clutching a HOA brochure, gawked at a soldier erecting a solar panel array next to his rose bush. They didn't understand it. They didn't know what to say. Because this wasn't vandalism. This wasn't revenge. This was legal, authorized, unstoppable. Karen Mallister, queen of the HOA, master of meetings, destroyer of dreams, emerged in full suburban battle dress, high-waisted khakis, a pastel pink cardigan, and a coffee mug that read, Queen Bee of the Ridge. Her eyes scanned the war zone that was once her perfectly controlled empire. The color drained from her face as soldiers marched past with crates of supplies and encrypted communication gear. She marched toward the command tent like a woman possessed. This is a neighborhood, she barked. You can't just invade us. This is residential land. A senior officer, stone-faced, unbothered, calmly handed her a federal document packet, complete with the Pentagon seal and authorization signatures from 4 departments. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. This land has been requisitioned temporarily under federal order for domestic military readiness. Everything here, he said while gesturing around him, is within legal rights under Title 10. Chapter 15. You can file a grievance with the Department of Defense. Karen's jaw worked like she was chewing air. Her face turned red, then purple. This is my neighborhood, she screeched. This is my HOA. You can't just take over. That's when the black SUV pulled up behind her. I stepped out, combat boots hitting the pavement, sunglasses on, duffel bag over my shoulder, and all the rage she'd buried me under, all the files and fines and smug condescension, I carried it with me like armor. I looked her in the eye and said, "You stole my house. Now I'm repossessing yours." She didn't speak. She couldn't. Not with the chopper blades beginning to spin, not with her entire kingdom falling apart around her, piece by piece, brick by brick. Behind me, a young engineer started hammering a steel plate into the dirt. It was a news sign, where her HOA welcome sign used to stand. The new one read, United States Department of Defense. Civic Shield Training Site Bravo Restricted Area. Entry without authorization is prohibited. Violators will be prosecuted under federal law. Chapter 7. Viral Warfare. The internet recessi thought the war had ended when the last convoy left Willow Ridge. I was wrong. Because the real battle, the one that would shatter the HOA's image nationwide, hadn't started yet, and unlike the others, I didn't need boots or rifles for this one. All I needed was Wi-Fi. It started with a single drone shot, soldiers patrolling freshly erected tents, Karen yelling red-faced at a colonel in press fatigues. Local news vans began rolling up. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Reporters squeezed their mix between fences, trying to get a shot of anything. Karen, still living in the fantasy that she was untouchable, tried to control the narrative. This is an illegal government occupation, she cried on Channel 7 News. They're abusing power. But the world saw the truth, because behind her voice were visuals she couldn't erase, her swatting at camera crews like flies, her HOA clubhouse now bearing a Department of Defense insignia, her precious flower beds, flattened by federal vehicles, and her kingdom, falling apart, one frightened board member at a time. But the real nuke didn't come from a tank. It came from Luis. My war brother. My digital hammer of justice. Late that night, Luis texted me just 3 words. It's time. Upload. It attached was a video. Footage recovered from a hidden audio feed inside a private HOA meeting, held 6 weeks. Before I returned, Karen's voice was unmistakable. He's overseas. He won't fight back. They never do once they're home. We'll flip the land. Green space cells. We call it communal joy. Easy. One less ex-military neighbor trying to serve the country with his flag and PTSD. They laughed. An entire room of elected HOA board members laughed while planning to erase my life and bury it under a dog park. I posted the clip on every platform I could find. Just one line. I'm home now. And then the internet did what it does best. It exploded. Chapter 8. Collapse of a Queen. Karen's Fall from the Throne Morning. It had 30 million views. Justice for Maple Trail. Karen vs Veteran. HOA Wars. Reddit took over. TikTok edits added dramatic music. Veterans across the country posted duets, saluting. News stations picked it up as one of the most shocking abuse of power HOA stories in American history. By noon, the Federal Land Review Board issued a formal notice. All Willow Ridge HOA operations suspended pending criminal and zoning investigation. Karen tried to rally the troops, but her board members, they were ghost. The treasurer resigned. The secretary lawyered up. The vice president issued a written apology and deleted all his social media. The ones who stuck around, subpoenaed. Luis had receipts, emails, logs, fake signatures, a burner HOA Slack account where they openly joked about using zoning laws to cleanse the neighborhood. He had it all. Karen's cousin, the one who ran the shell company that bought my home, was indicted for fraud, conspiracy, and falsification of federal property deeds. The contractor who bulldozed my house, he turned state's witness fast. Even HOA members from other neighborhoods across the state filed complaints, claiming they had seen similar abuses. A web of misconduct spanning years unraveled in a week. And what about the residents of Willow Ridge? The ones once too afraid to leave their trash cans out. Past 9 a.m., they hosted a block party. DJ, grill, lemonade stands on HOA land just to celebrate Karen's downfall. By day 3, Karen Mallister was no longer president. She was a suspect, charged with HOA fraud, embezzlement of federal military rights, obstruction of investigation, abuse of civilian zoning authority. Final nail. Her property, once acquired under falsified HOA transactions, was deemed illegally seized and zoned. Karen Mallister was evicted from her own home by a federal officer. She watched from her driveway as her belongings were boxed under court order. One of the boxes still had her Queen Bee of the Ridge mug inside. Chapter 9. The Rebuilt from Ashes to Foundation. 30 days after I set foot on my old lot, I stood there again. But this time, not in disbelief, I stood with purpose. The Veterans Association, once they heard the story, reached out. They offered funds, support, Even builders, volunteers poured in. Neighbors, veterans, strangers. One guy drove 3 states just to help. A woman in her 60s, dressed in a soft purple sweater and holding a tray of lemon bars, stepped forward one afternoon. Her voice cracked as she said, "I'm sorry we let this happen. We all saw the signs. We just stayed quiet." I nodded. "It's not about what didn't happen then," I told her. "It's about what you're doing now." A local contractor handed me a hammer. "First nail's yours, Sergeant." I stepped up to the framework. The beams were new, but the land felt old, sacred. And right where the porch swing would eventually hang. I drove that first nail, not just for me, but for every homeowner ever crushed by corruption. Epilogue. One nail at a time, and the final thought: Willow Ridge didn't just rebuild my home. It rebuilt itself. The HOA was gone, abolished by court order. In its place, a voluntary civic board. No fines, no citations, no garden inspections. Just neighbors helping neighbors. The dog park, still there, but now renamed Valor Field in honor of Sergeant James Holloway and all who serve. Karen Mallister. She fled the state, last I heard. She was trying to sell MLM candles under a fake name in Arizona. Her mugshot eventually surfaced online. I didn't repost it. I didn't need to. Because justice isn't about gloating. It's about closure. And my house, it stands once again. White siding, blue shutters, swing on the porch, the American flag flying high. And when the wind blows just right, sometimes I can still smell my mother's perfume from the porch. They erased my life while I was overseas, thinking I wouldn't return. They paved over memories with lies and laws. But they forgot one thing: I came home trained. I came home patient. And I came home ready. They started it with fraud. I finished it with facts. They fought with HOA bylaws. I fought with truth, honor, and resolve. One soldier. One document. One hammer. One nail at a time. Final thoughts perfect for outro on YouTube. If you've ever been bullied by a corrupt HOA, if you've ever been told you were too small to fight the system, or if you've ever felt like no one would believe your story,